4570 Apologetics, part number 6. Now, one of the criticisms of the 4570 is its expansion is not that great. Let's get into that. The 4570s, let's back up a second. Expansion with bullets is something that is really important and becomes more increasingly important the smaller the bullet diameter gets. Because if you're hunting with a 27 caliber bullet with like any variety of 6.5 cartridges, which I believe is a 27 caliber bullet, or a 270, which I believe that I'm in the right diameter, in just going off of memory. With those bullets, they need to be going fast enough that they can open when they hit something and open really, really wide. Because if it's small and it doesn't open, it's going to leave a very small hole, and some animals can even just heal from a small bullet hole through them. Animals are tough, and if they don't heal, then they're going to die slowly, and you might not find them before they're dead. And in that case, you're a bad hunter, and shame on you. People make mistakes, but be smart. Hopefully you don't do it again, and if you do make that mistake, it was a one-time thing. But the smaller that bullet gets, the more critical expansion becomes, especially with larger animals. 30 caliber bullets also rely heavily on expansion when they hit game animals, because same thing, it's still on that smaller end. 40, it's less true because you're starting out with a wider bullet to enter the animal. With 45 and 50 and bigger, you're beginning with a bullet that's already as wide as some of those smaller bullets will expand to. You're starting out with already a bigger bullet. And so the 4570 expansion is not as critical for lethality as a 30 caliber bullet, because it's just wider to begin with and more blood is going to flow out with that wider bullet hole. So whenever people like to talk down 4570 based upon expansion, they'll bring up percentages a lot of the time, or multiplication numbers. But at the end of the day, if a 4570 doesn't expand and a 30 caliber bullet only expands to a ½ inch, which, you could make that argument that it's 0.05 inches bigger at that point. And so if it goes the same depth as the 4570, it's going to be more of a hole. First of all, it has to enter before it expands. So if we were to take an actual volume measurement, the 4570s might still be bigger. If it matches that same depth, which it's probably, if the 4570 did not expand at all, it probably just zipped through that animal, where if that expanding bullet goes in and stops, then that hole ain't going to be as deep either way. So you have just more tissue removed from the animal in the end with a bigger hole. And bloodshot is something that is real, and you can witness it when you take an animal apart. But I've shot multiple elk with a 30-06, and I've never had the bullets actually exit on an elk. I've taken all of my elk with Remington Corox 180 grain bullets, and either with collision on bone or just simply getting caught up in all the tissue, they haven't exited. So the hole is not going all the way through, where with 4570, in 2 of the elk that I've taken with 4570, they've exited. One elk that I took, when I hit him, the 4570 bullet hit him in the spine because he was running, and it still killed him really fast. I didn't have to do anything to him when I got to him, and he was only about 80 yards away. Where when I hit an elk in the spine with a 30-06, I had to get on it and finish it. So when it comes to expansion and things like that, expansion is not as critical with 4570 as it is with a 30 caliber, a 27 caliber, or 25 caliber cartridge for hunting game. Now, if my 4570 preferred cartridge for hunting is a Hornady FTX 325, and those expand, and they'll expand even at 200 yards. And when they do, they add quite a bit of width to themselves. So they go from being a half-inch wide thing to adding in, to where it's usually about 3/4 of an inch up to an inch after it strikes. So the 45-70 with proper bullets expand really well. And then there are some 45-70 rounds that expand almost to a full inch, but you've got all of that weight behind the bullet to go pushing through things. And so you wind up with this really, really wide hole that tends to go pretty darn deep. And if you hypothetically get a failure to expand, which can happen with any expanding bullet can fail to expand. And I've had friends who, on hunts with long range, really flat shooting cartridges, have had bullets fail to expand and put multiple holes in one elk, and the elk still got away. The worst one I don't want to talk about that. Never mind. I'm gonna stop right there, just because other people's bad moments don't deserve to be blasted over the internet. But the 45-70 though, even with failure to expand, is still really wide. So expansion with the 45-70 with a properly high quality made round is going to do great. But even if it doesn't properly expand, you're still left with enough bullet. If you're hunting with something like a 30-06 though, expansion is necessary. Same thing, and the smaller it gets, the more critical that expansion becomes, and that long range expansion is very, very important, more vital than a 45-70. So expansion in the 45-70, while it is very good, and it tends to be really phenomenal, and you're going to get pretty big pretty fast, unless you get a failure to expand or something doesn't expand very well, the 45-70 is still really wide to begin with. And so with that being said, it's very little that it's probably with that being said, with a failure to expand, the 45-70 is enough, and with expansion, it is really good. And for that reason, I like the 45-70, and I call myself a 45-70 apologist.